Hello everyone and welcome to another Pathfinder Lair video. Last week, Taking20 did a video responding to the responses to the video I covered last week. In it, he gives an example as to why he thinks combat in Pathfinder 2e is boring. Sorry man, I really respect you and all that you do, but I'm gonna have to completely destroy your example by just making two changes.
Hold up.
Okay guys, this video is way too long for me to react to, so I'm only going to be reacting to his example, which we will start right now.
So you want to make a ranger for your next Pathfinder 2e game, and you've come up with your background, and you know that you want to use a bow like Legolas. That's it. Nothing fancy or over the top. Very reasonable ranger with the bow trope. You're level 1, and so you get to pick between 5 choices for your first feat. Your choices are between Animal Companion, Crossbow Ace, Hunted Shot, Monster Hunter, and Twin Takedown. 5 totally and completely different choices here. But you want to shoot arrows with your bow. So Animal Companion, it isn't really the vibe you're going for. Neither is Crossbow Ace. Twin Takedown is all about double striking with your sword. Hunted Shot lets you fire 2 arrows as one action, so probably pretty good. And Monster Hunter lets you point at something to briefly give your team a +1 to hit an enemy one time. So you take Hunted Shot. Not super power gamey, okay? You took the one choice you had that helped your bow be a little better. That's all. Now, you also get 2 abilities at level 1 as part of your core class. Hunt Prey, which takes an action and gives you some bonuses to seeking out your opponent, and Hunter's Edge, which, when you fire arrows against your hunted prey, you get a bonus to your bow's damage if you choose the bow option here and not the sword option.
Okay, first of all, number 1, no such thing as a bow option and a sword option in Pathfinder 2e. The only thing that makes... There's accuracy, damage, and skill increases. Those are your options. The only thing that makes accuracy a sword option is that if your weapon has the finesse trait, then you get a little bit more to hit. That's the only thing that makes it a sword option. But, other than that, all of them work equally as well with a bow or a sword. So no, there is no bow option and sword option.
The level of power gaming here is already insane, right? I mean, level 1, and we've already started down the path as those min-maxers. Next thing you know, if you're not careful, you'll be putting points into your dexterity score. Like, whoa, you're an unstoppable force of min-maxing optimization here, guys. You should slow down. So during those first few fights at level 1, you fought goblins, a fire elemental, which was pretty cool, an ill-intentioned wizard, and a huge flying bat. And for all of those, you hunt prey, hunted shot, and a third attack if you didn't have to move closer. For level 2, you skipped favorite terrain, hunter's aim, monster warden, because that's technically triggered off of Monster Hunter as though it were a pure feat tree, even though, you know, many people said that those don't exist in this edition, and wild empathy to just take quick draw. And already, guys, wow, you are a power gamer dedicated to nothing more than DPR without any roleplay or any creativity, because you took the one bow feat at level 1, and at level 2 you thought maybe you could draw your bow quicker if things got bad for your group. Level 3, you take Hefty Hauler for your general feat because you think it fits well with your character's background of hunting large game and having to carry your kills back to be dressed. And for your third ranger feat at level 4, you snag up Far Shot, which is pretty weak, just increasing your arrow's distance, but it fits with that flavor of being a cool archer ranger pretty well, so you snag it up. Now, sarcasm aside, okay, let's put this ranger inside of a combat right now. Right now, let's throw it up against a flying CR8 Chimera in a mountain valley. Let's throw it up against a hidden away CR4 mimic hiding in the master suite of an abandoned manor house. Let's throw the ranger and their party up against a pair of ghouls and a pair of ghasts that rise up defending a cavern entrance to a necromancer's lair. Your adrenaline's pumping, Ranger. It's your turn. You have 3 actions. What do? In all of these fights, they hunt prey, hunted shot, and fire a 3rd volley. The same thing they've been doing in every single combat situation since that first session. Assuming, of course, they don't have to escape from the mimic's clutches first. I mean, can we spice up these combats even further by giving the players more things to engage with in their environments? Sure we can. But trying to point the finger at all 3 of these very different creature types and 3 very different environments is purposefully choosing to be contrary and avoiding the core issue and point. Even if temporarily altered by the enemies and combat scenes, if you will, the players will continue to push through the rotations of optimal actions whenever given the choice. And they do this without being power gamers or running the numbers real quick or being statisticians. They do this because it's what the game's core engine and mechanics nudge them to do. You have 3 actions. You hunt prey, hunted shot, fire off a 3rd arrow if you don't need to use one of your actions to maybe move over a little bit. Fast forward the clock and look at level 10 and level 12, and I assure you, they'll still be doing the same thing. Hunt prey, hunted shot, fire off 3rd arrow.
So if you go back and you check out my podcast, I had a player who was playing a ranger, and within, I want to say 7 to 8 episodes, you will hear his rotation in combat. Every combat, it's the same rotation. We played all the way from level 1 to level 16.
For the ranger, it's hunt prey, hunted shot, throw in a 3rd shot that usually misses. My druid...
Was that the rotation your ranger used?
Yeah, that's the exact rotation.
Why? Because it's literally the best thing to do, which is no different than 5th edition, by the way. And I know that this is the exact point at which all the response videos will likely have paused to yell in disagreement because I use the phrase best thing to do here. But again, that's just their way of avoiding talking about the game's mechanics with trying to catch my thesis in that perfect gotcha moment. Of course, guys, of course the players don't have to do the best thing all the time. Of course, okay? If that's all the discussion you have to offer, then you're really missing the point. And I would argue that you're missing the point on purpose because you're experiencing cognitive dissonance. Feel free to disagree with me, but that's my opinion. But for fun, let's take a direct comparison between the Pathfinder Ranger choices and the notoriously bad 5th edition Ranger class. For this example, we'll pair our 2 rangers with a buddy and slide over into a fight between a pair of nasty wights, since both of those creatures are considered by their respective systems to be a CR3. And we'll set the level for all 4 of our characters to level 5, since that seems to be a good benchmark for really both game systems. Our level 5 Pathfinder Ranger has just picked up Natural Medicine at level 5, so they can use their nature skill to treat wounds. Meanwhile, our level 5 D&D Ranger has gone Hunter Colossus Slayer at level 3. And just so we can make the comparison really as equal as possible, while I won't give the Pathfinder Ranger any magic items, okay, freely admitting that, I will give the 5e Ranger simple moon-touched weapons just for the sake of overcoming the 5e Wight's damage resistance, which the Pathfinder Wight does not have. Here, we have 2 identical combats taking place. For the sake of the argument, let's just say that this is already in the middle of combat, but neither the Pathfinder's Hunt Prey or the D&D's Hunter's Mark are active at the moment. And I won't even go into the details for the fighters just to keep things simple. On the left, I think y'all's left will be here, side of the screen, you have the Pathfinder 2e game, and on the right, you have the 5th edition game. Let's examine for a moment a basic strike and basic attack for our 2 systems so we can see what the numbers look like. For our Pathfinder Ranger, they currently have 18 dexterity, which, after being moved to expert for martial weapons from the weapon expertise class feature, that gives them a plus 13 modifier at level 5 to hit with their longbow. The Pathfinder Wight, as listed on page 332 of the Pathfinder 2e Bestiary, has an 18 armor class, giving our ranger a whopping 80% chance to hit, and because any result of 10 or more in excess of the target's AC turns our success into a critical success, we also have a 30% chance, which is to say rolling a 15 or higher, to land a critical against our Wight. or to be more specific, we've got an 80% chance to hit with 30% of that number representing our odds of critting. Now, this doesn't tell 100% of the story because of how the multi-attack penalty works, but we'll get more into this here in just a moment. Looking at our 5e Ranger with a current dexterity score of 16, that gives us a +8 to hit after our proficiency mod and our archery fighting style. Turning to the white, as listed on page 300 in the D&D 5e Monster Manual, we see that our target has an AC of just 14, which gives our Ranger a 75% chance to score a hit, with 5% of that being our critical range. Now, let's slide back over to our Pathfinder Ranger as it's their turn. So what we're going to do here is go over a few different options based on the game's core mechanics and design that the Ranger might take, right? They might take as their set of actions. And for argument's sake, we're going to start off with the most obvious set of actions with Hunt Prey, Hunted Shot, Strike as our option 1 as a sort of baseline. Now, notice that I did not use the word best here, right? I replaced it with simply most obvious. Because I think when I used the word best in my last video, people tried to just really jump all over it in a very disingenuous way. Like, oh, he said best. He's a power gamer. We heard it. He said best. Good game, guys. Good game. We got him. He said best. We got him. Nothing to see here. Move along. Power gamer. That's all it is.
I'm actually not going to say that, but I do disagree with him, and my example will prove that.
So I'm replacing the word best here with most obvious set of actions. And I think it describes really what I'm talking about even better. It's the most obvious choice of actions. Okay, so option 1, they could Hunt Prey with their first action, triggering their Hunter's Edge. Then with their second action, they could, guess what? Hunted Shot and fire 2 shots, with the first as an 80% chance to hit and 30% chance to crit, triggering the Longbow's deadly trait, followed by your second shot as a 55% chance to connect and 5% chance to crit. And then, with their third action, they could Strike, firing a third arrow with a 30% chance to connect and a 5% chance to crit. 30% of the time, on just that first shot alone, we're dealing an average of 23.5 points of damage, or 24 points of damage, or in essence, roughly half of the white's average 50 hit points. A very effective choice that utilizes the first feat choice we made during character creation, right? Go figure. We picked a feat, and we're using it. In addition, I've included a few more numbers up on the screen here for a frame of reference. Because of how the Hunter's Edge triggers only once a turn, I'm not going to go into the details of the full math, okay? You'll just have to take my word for it, or maybe not take my word for it, I guess. I don't know. Option 2.
Okay. Alright, first of all, number 1, in that example, he's forgetting about something very important. He is forgetting about the chance to critically miss. In this example, on his third shot, if he rolls a 5 or less, that is a 25% chance to crit miss. Yes, that's right. If he rolls a 5 or less, he crit misses. And the thing is, I don't know how he does it in his games, but in my game, if you critically miss, something bad happens to you in addition to just missing. Number 1. Well, one of 4 things will happen to the Ranger if he crit misses. In my game, anyway. Number 1. He shoots himself in the foot. Number 2. He falls prone on his butt. Number 3. He drops his bow, having to spend an action to pick it up next turn. And the fourth option is he shoots the fighter in the back. Yes. 25% chance to crit miss. That's almost as much as the chance I have to hit this white. In his example. This is why I do not do third attacks. It's almost never worth it to go for a third attack. But, okay. And this is just against a creature that is 2 levels lower than the ranger. So let's say we put him up against something a bit more challenging. Like, let's say a winter wolf. Alright? A winter wolf has an AC of 23. So, on my third attack, I cannot hit this thing unless I roll a natural 20. Seriously. I cannot hit it unless I roll a natural 20. That would be a crit, but I cannot hit this thing unless I roll a natural 20 on my third attack. Compare that to the whopping chance there is to crit miss. If I roll a 10 or less, I crit miss. Assuming balanced dice, that is a whopping 50% chance to crit miss. And take one of those penalties I mentioned before. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but he is completely missing that. And that is why third attacks are almost never worth it.
Let's say the ranger has been shooting their bow a lot and wants to mix things up by moving up to engage white number 1 in melee combat to cut off and protect their fighter companion. For this, they'll stride up next to the white and then use quick draw to retrieve their melee weapon and strike as one action, and then strike with their third action. Assumingly, we'll just have to continue to hold our bow with our other hand, which is perfectly legal in the rules, and that's why we didn't need to stow it first or drop it. In this instance, I am assuming the ranger has a short sword equipped instead of a rapier for that versatile trait to deal slashing if need be. And because the short sword has the finesse trait, so they can use their dexterity modifier in place of that strength. That gives us a single attack at an 80% chance to connect with the same 30% crit chance as the bow's first strike. And guess what? A single attack at 55% chance to connect, with 5% of that being our critical range. This, of course, will also forego the Hunter's Edge bonus completely, so no additional D8 there. And of course, the ranger won't be able to utilize their hunted shot feat on their following turn unless they reverse actions and retrieve and use their bow. This gives us an average output of 3.8 points of damage on the first attack and a 2.01 on the second with a strength score of 10, which is a decrease from our first option of a whopping 65% on average.
Okay. First of all, that 10 strength tells me that yes, this is a min-maxed ranger. Yes, 10 strength is what you would give a normal min-maxed ranger. You probably put a 16 in wisdom. This is a min-maxed ranger, period.
If we were to compare the difference in the maximum potential damage, that's a drop of 69.3%. But that doesn't tell the whole story, because we should also consider that the ranger is now engaged with the white. So they have, in essence, granted the white an additional action here, because prior to the ranger's move, the white would have at minimum had to at least spend a single action striding to either the ranger or over to the fighter. However, it now can freely stand in place and take all 3 of its actions attacking the ranger back. So not only have we decreased our own deficiency significantly, but we've also boosted the effectiveness now of our enemy with this choice. For brevity's sake, I won't go into the statistical differences for this white. I think it's easy enough to evaluate as I've already presented it here. Moving on to option 3, we could instead choose to jump to the fighter's aid and engage white number 2. So for our action here, we would stride 25 feet, counting every other diagonal as 10, followed by a 5-foot step to get into our final position. And finally, quick draw with a strike. This is a slightly better option for us as it allows us to flank for our attack. So this time we have a drop in average damage of 70.3% and a drop in our maximum potential damage to the white of 84.6%. Now again, This also is a set of actions that would completely ignore your hunted shot feat and your hunter's edge bonus until you decided to switch back to that most obvious choice of actions here on your next turn. However, something to consider is that the fighter now has a flanking partner as well. But before we dig into that, we could also argue that yes, while the fighter can now flank, so too can the second white. Both would get that additional 10% boost to their chance to hit, which is why, again, for brevity's sake, I'm not going to go into all of the little minutia of it. Also, it would be kind of ironic for people to argue with that as the point of this exercise is to evaluate the game's mechanics on what your expected set of actions would be versus trying to be creative and mix things up with the core game engine and to illustrate your point of increased effectiveness and trying something different in a real world example. For this ranger, you simply had their counterpart in the fighter really do nothing more than their most obvious set of actions to really take advantage of those rangers' choices here to try to be more creative. Bottom line, yes, the ranger helped the fighter, but they also increased the effectiveness of both whites in the process with flanking of their own. But, Cody, I can hear you saying, combat isn't always about the most damage. Yeah, I totally agree. So let's have the Rangers really mix things up and do something wild and crazy here for a fourth option, just for kicks. It's going to be a silly example, but for kicks, let's do something wacky. Option 4, just for fun here, they could stride to the white, engage with the fighter, and with their free hand, trip, which, runs the risk of the archer just falling over prone themselves. Then they could even attempt to grapple the white on the ground to hold them in place for the fighter with that third action. This, of course, would still trigger the multi-attack penalty because both trip and grapple have that attack trait, so the grapple would be at a -5, and, of course, it would use the ranger's strength, not their dexterity modifier, and then, the ranger would also be prone for the other white, but after foregoing 3 attacks with the weapon that crits 30% of the time on the first shot, the ranger has still accomplished a lot, because whenever the fighter goes, guess what? The white now has a -2 penalty to its AC, but in a way cooler way than just flanking it. Now, the white, of course, doesn't actually need to be standing to use the strike action, and so it only takes a -2 to hit the ranger who's grabbing it, but since, technically the ranger also has the prone condition, that's actually a wash. And, of course, the second white still standing would, in turn, get the same bonus to hit the now prone ranger as the fighter has against the first white, but at least we had this fourth incredibly satisfying option available to us. Because, as many of the comments and criticisms I received this week said, Pathfinder 2E's robust combat system is really all about getting more creative and using those skill actions in combat to shove and grapple and trip people. So at least we got to see what really getting wild and wacky with some good old-fashioned shenanigans could do for us mechanically. Are there other options than just these few in this example that the devil's advocates could type up in a response to that perfect but Cody, I would do this or that, or I would grab a rope and then start running around the white like they were AT-ATs? Of course, there's other options, but because of the game's mechanics and how the game is designed and how the feats work versus the basic combat choices presented to us by Paizo, none of those options are really even close to being genuinely decent options in combat as just standing there and shooting your bow because the feats that you've taken. It's not...
Okay, yes, on the first action, yes, it is your best option with this character to shoot the bow. Even with my character, that's the best option. But let's see if he goes into the second round, shall we?
Not just that the other options are worse. Notice how I use the word worse and not bad. Is that they are so much worse that choosing them means you are clearly, purposefully extending the combat for your group unnecessarily. And I would argue that for a system that supposedly is the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme for creating interesting combats and characters, I don't believe it to be particularly delivering on those expectations. But let's be fair. Does the 5e Ranger in this circumstance, in this snapshot, have a better set of options, really? The 5e...
Okay, alright, I'm going to switch over because I don't care about the 5e Ranger. I care about does he have a second example? So, I am going to. Does he have an example for the second round of this combat? So, I'm going to make a cut here, and hopefully he does. Okay, guys, I think I found the second example that he goes into here for the second round of combat. Which, yeah.
Just because I find this interesting. Let's look at one more example and say that the Pathfinder Ranger, that, hey, they did their hunt prey, they did their hunted shot and strike combo, and in turn, the 5e Ranger simply hunter's marked, attack, extra attack, without even using their movement. Let's flip the table and look at the whites here for a moment. Let's say both the DM and the GM have the white that was shot at move in to engage the Rangers. Okay, they make their attacks. Maybe they get hit, maybe they don't. Really, the only addition that might matter for is for the 5e Ranger so that they don't, again, drop concentration and have to burn another spell slot. Which might actually lend to a more interesting choice, by the way, for the DM playing out that combat. They could double up on the fighter, or they could try to get to the Ranger so that they drop their Hunter's Mark. As an aside, I would probably have the white attack whomever taunted in character via roleplay, or even whomever the 10 intelligence white evaluated as the bigger threat after the first round of actions. Or sometimes, depending on the situation in total, I would just roll. That's just a little tip out there for DMs who struggle with spreading out their monsters to avoid feeling like they're picking on one particular player too much in a campaign. But I digress. Now, it's the Rangers' turns again. Here's a great example of why I'm saying the Pathfinder core game mechanics do not lend to interesting choices, but rather an illusion of choice. Now that the Pathfinder Ranger, who is using a bow, has had a melee combatant close in on them, let's see just how much it has affected their choices. The only problem is that it doesn't. Yes, you heard that right. The Pathfinder Ranger still can just stand there, firing now 4 arrows right into the face of the white, with that first arrow still having a 30% chance to drop half of the white's life total on average without any penalty. Literally, the Pathfinder Ranger's most obvious option is still to just stand there and try to finish off the white with hunted shot, strike, and then strike again. Some of you might be saying, but Cody, shouldn't the white get an attack of opportunity? Shouldn't the white being up on the Ranger give it at least a penalty to shoot? The answer to both of those questions is simply no. It does neither of those things. There is no penalty to shoot a bow right in someone's grill. And because of the changes Paizo made to attacks of opportunity, the white actually doesn't get any reaction here. The Game Master's choice to move the white into melee with the Ranger has had 0 mechanical effect on the game. Literally, the positioning didn't even affect the game 1%. Super interesting combat choices, huh? I can hear you keyboard warriors losing your minds right now, so I will address the fact that yes, if the white had been a different monster with the attack of opportunity feature, shooting the bow then would have triggered an attack against the Ranger. And yes, you're absolutely correct. I'm not denying that. But I went through the entire bestiary by hand and counted every single stat block, no matter how similar they were, to just see how many of them had attack of opportunity. My total, 55 out of the 411 stat blocks in the book.
Okay, first of all, he is assuming something that I hate more than anything else that players do. He is assuming that the player of this hypothetical Ranger is metagaming. Yes, that is what he is assuming. He is assuming that they are metagaming. How does the Ranger know that the white has AOs? How does he know that the white doesn't have AOs? Or another reaction. How does he know that? The answer is, that player is metagaming. And it's something I hate more than anything else that players do.
book. So that's just 13% of the monsters in the game, roughly, or at least the first bestiary, they could get that single reaction attack. And because it matters, 9 of those 55 were versions of the same dragon. So I counted the young red, the adult red, and the ancient red each, and so on. So really, the variance of the monsters that have attack of opportunity isn't even really that high. Also, yes, the white technically has a reaction when it dies to attack again. So moving it there would theoretically matter if the player didn't know the stat block, which, by the way, they shouldn't, okay? If you're a player, don't read monster stat blocks, damn it.
Yes, yes. Oh my god. He literally says, don't read master stat blocks, but that's exactly what he's doing. That is exactly what he is assuming that the player is doing. That is exactly what he is assuming that the player is doing. Oh my god, seriously?
Okay? Worst case, if the ranger player was really worried about triggering an attack of opportunity, they could have gone from 4 arrows down to 3 and simply just moved away 5 feet. The point really is all still the same. But what happens when the shoe is on the other foot? What happens when the white crashes down on the 5e ranger? Well, funny enough, the 5e combat...
Okay, don't care about the 5e combat, but... Okay, let's just look at a different ranger. Let's take the exact same ranger that he was looking at, but change 2 things. For number 1, let's give him an 18 strength, because we want to be good in both melee and range. But we want to be better at our bow, so we're going to take the same feats. Now, let's give him a long sword, instead of a short sword. Now let's just see how much it actually changes the combat. First round, yes, best option is to, most obvious option, and best option, really, is to hunt prey, hunted shot. But, because of the crit chance, since I have almost as much of a chance to crit success, to crit fail as I do to succeed, I'm not going to fire that 3rd arrow. Why? Because I realize that that white is going to do one of 2 things, most likely. It's either going to move up to attack the fighter, or it's going to move up into melee combat with me. Either way, it's moving closer to me. So, I'm going to stow my bow. That's right, I'm thinking ahead. I'm not going to take that 3rd shot because it's not worth it, and I know that the white is probably going to move up to engage with me, right? So, stow my bow. Now let's look at the 2nd round. I've already hunted prey and done my hunted shot, but now I'm not holding any weapon. The white moves up to me, makes its attacks, sure. Okay, now, next round, moves up to me, as I thought it would. Then, I use quick draw to draw my longsword. Okay, now, the thing is that when I was using my bow, the maximum damage that I could do with 2 shots was 68. With the deadly trait and everything. 68 was the maximum damage I could do with 2 shots. Pretty sure that he messed up on the maximum damage for 3 shots. But that's beside the point. It's 68 for 2 shots. Now, if the white moves up to me, I can quick draw my sword, allowing me to strike and rod with the same action, make a 2nd strike, And then maybe... I'm not going to take that third strike because of the miss chance. So, I might move away with that third action so that I can use my bow on my next turn. Now, me using my sword gives me a maximum of 64 damage with 2 strikes. 64! Because I get that +4 strength. Because my first attack has a maximum of 40 damage. Because I've already hunt prey, so 16 max damage if it isn't a crit. No, I get 20 maximum damage if it isn't a crit. And 40 if it is a crit. On my second attack, I get 12 damage if it's a regular hit, and 24 damage if it's a crit. That equals 64. I hope you realize what I've done here. I lose 4 damage points from going from my bow to my sword. 4. That's it. That's all I lose. And I've done something completely different on my second turn than I have on my first turn. Yes. It is. And the thing is, all I've done is give my ranger an 18 strength and given him a longsword. That's it. That's all I've done to the belt. I still have all the feat choices that he went through. I'm more optimal to my bow, yes. But, however, because I have that 4 strength, because I have that 18 strength, I actually do just about as much damage as I do with my sword, as I do with my bow, with my sword. See what I did there, man? That's called creative. That is called not min-maxing. Yeah. Yeah. What you did was min-maxing. And that's pretty much going to wrap up this video, guys. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe for more Pathfinder 2nd Edition content. Next week, I will be continuing my Ancestry album series. Actually, next week I will be doing a different kind of video. I still need to re-edit some of my previous Ancestry album videos, but I can do that over the next few days. So yeah, next week I'm going to be doing a different kind of video, one that was actually inspired by this video. So I hope you enjoy it. And until next time, let's play some Pathfinder.